The dropship shook like an angry beast as it cut through the thick clouds of Kepler 442b. Lieutenant Nari Kim pressed her back against the metal wall and checked her rifle for the third time. The weapon was clean, loaded, and ready. Just like always. 2 minutes to landing, the pilot called from the front. His voice crackled through the old speakers. Nari looked across the narrow space at her squad. Sergeant Tay Park sat quietly, his eyes closed. He always did this before a mission. Said it helped him think clearly. Corporal June Lee was cleaning his knife with a dirty cloth. The blade already looked perfect, but June never stopped working on it. Private Hana Choi stared out the small window at the planet below. Her young face was serious. "What do you think happened down there?" Hana asked without turning around. Tay opened his eyes. "Colony went dark 3 weeks ago. Could be anything. Equipment failure. Storm damage. Maybe they just forgot to call home." June snorted. "Right. 3 weeks and nobody thought to send a message. Not even a quick hello." Nari shifted her gear. The heavy vest pressed against her ribs, but she was used to it. "We'll find out soon enough. Command says it's routine evacuation assistance. In and out. When has anything been routine?" Hana muttered. The dropship hit rough air and dropped suddenly. Nari's stomach jumped. Through the window, she could see the surface getting closer. Rolling hills covered in strange blue-green plants. Rivers that looked almost purple in the alien sunlight. And there, in a valley between 2 low mountains, the human colony of New Busan. Something was wrong with it. "Look at the walls," June said, leaning toward the window. Nari could see it now. The colony's outer defenses had huge holes in them. The metal walls were twisted and bent like something had torn through them from the outside. But there were no burn marks, no explosion damage, just clean breaks as if the metal had been pulled apart by giant hands. "That's not weapon damage," Tay said quietly. Strange blue lights dotted the ground around the colony. They pulsed slowly like heartbeats. As the dropship flew lower, Nari could see they were some kind of pods. Each one was about the size of a small house. They had smooth organic curves and seemed to glow from within. "Those weren't in the colony reports," Hana said. The pilot's voice came through the speakers again. "Setting down at landing pad 3. Looks clear from up here." The dropship touched the ground with a hard bump. Nari felt the engines wind down. The sudden quiet was almost worse than the noise had been. She could hear her own breathing, her heartbeat, the small clicks and beeps of their equipment. "All right," she said, standing up. "Standard sweep pattern. Watch for anything that moves." The colonists sent a distress beacon before they went quiet. Signal came from the central compound. They moved out of the dropship in formation. Tay took point with his heavy rifle. Nari followed, scanning left and right. June covered their rear while Hana watched the sky. The air smelled wrong. Not bad exactly, but strange, like flowers and metal mixed together. The gravity was a bit lighter than Earth normal, making each step feel slightly bouncy. The colony was too quiet. Nari had been to dozens of human settlements across the galaxy. They were always noisy places. Machines humming, people talking, children laughing, vehicles moving around. But New Busan was silent except for the wind. They passed between damaged buildings. Windows were broken. Doors hung open. Personal belongings were scattered on the ground. A child's toy robot lay on its side, still trying to walk with one broken leg. "Motion sensors are picking up something," Hana said, checking her scanner. "Central compound. Multiple life signs. How many?" Nari asked. "Hard to tell. They're underground." They moved carefully through the colony's main street. More of those blue pods were scattered around, some small, some huge. Up close, Nari could see they had thick, fibrous walls. Like plant material, but tougher. The light inside them shifted and swirled. "Think those things are dangerous?" June asked, giving one a wide berth. "Everything's dangerous until we know what it is," Tay replied. The central compound was a cluster of low buildings around a small plaza. It looked like it had been the heart of the community. There was a fountain in the center, now dry. Shops and offices lined the square. Everything was empty. Hana's scanner beeped faster. The signal's coming from underneath the administration building. Some kind of basement or shelter. They found the entrance behind the main building. Heavy metal doors set into the ground. Emergency shelter doors, the kind every human colony had in case of attack or natural disaster. Nari pressed her ear to the metal. She could hear something inside. Voices. Quiet crying. She knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. The old Earth signal for friendly contact. The voices inside went silent. Then a small voice called out, "Who's there?" "Human Colonial Marines," Nari called back. "Lieutenant Kim, are you colonists from New Busan?" "Yes." The voice was young, maybe a teenager. "Are you really human? Are you here to help?" "We're human and we're here to help. Can you open the door?" She heard movement inside, the sound of several people talking quietly. Then mechanical clicks as the door locks opened. The heavy door swung up slowly. Pale faces looked up at them from the darkness below. Children's faces, Nari counted quickly. More than 30 kids, ranging from tiny ones who could barely walk to teenagers nearly old enough to join the Marines themselves. They were dirty and thin but alive. "Where are the adults?" Tay asked gently. A girl who looked about 12 stepped forward. Her clothes were torn and she had dirt on her face, but her eyes were clear and intelligent. "I'm Yuna. The grown-ups are gone. The things from the pods took them 3 weeks ago." "Took them where?" Nari knelt down to be at eye level with the girl. "We don't know. They came at night. Big things that looked like walking trees. They grabbed all the adults and carried them away. They didn't hurt us, but they didn't take us either. Like we weren't what they wanted." A smaller boy, maybe 8 years old, tugged on Nari's sleeve. "Are Mom and Dad coming back?" he asked. Nari looked into his hopeful face and felt something tight form in her chest. She had seen that look before. In war zones across the galaxy, children waiting for parents who would never come home. "What's your name?" she asked. "Minho." "Okay, Minho. Right now we're going to make sure you're all safe. Then we're going to figure out what happened to everyone else." She stood up and looked around the shelter. The children had done their best to take care of themselves. They had organized their supplies, set up sleeping areas, even created a small school corner where the older kids were teaching the younger ones. "You've all been very brave," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "How much food do you have left?" "Maybe 2 days," Yuna replied. "We've been careful, but there are so many of us." Nari nodded. "Hana, call for supply drop. Full rations for 40 people plus medical supplies." She looked back at the children. "We're going to get you fed and safe. Then we're going to call for help." But even as she said it, she wondered what kind of help they could get, and what had really happened to the adults of New Busan. The blue pods pulsed steadily in the distance as if they were waiting for something. 3 hours after Nari's squad found the children, the sky above New Busan began to change. Long shadows fell across the colony as a massive ship blocked out the sun. The vessel was sleek and white, with strange curves that hurt to look at too long. It was 10 times bigger than their dropship. "Galactic Union peacekeeping vessel," Hana said, reading her scanner. 2 species on board. Vorthak and Zilani. Nari felt her jaw tighten. She had worked with alien peacekeepers before. They were efficient, organized, and completely cold when it came to human problems. "Get the kids ready," she told her squad. "This is about to get complicated." The children were eating their first real meal in days when the aliens arrived. Portable food heaters had warmed up military rations into something that almost tasted like home cooking. Little Minho was working on his second helping when the transport beams lit up the colony's main plaza. 2 figures materialized in columns of blue light. The first was Commander Zelth of the Vorthak. He stood nearly 8 feet tall and looked like he was made of living crystal. His body caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. When he moved, tiny chimes rang from deep inside his chest. The second was Hive Speaker Crix of the Zilani. She was shorter than the Vorthak, but much wider. Her body was covered in chitinous plates that clicked when she walked. 4 arms moved independently while her large compound eyes swept the area. 2 smaller Zilani drones flanked her, their heads twitching as they scanned for threats. "Lieutenant Kim," Commander Zelth said. His voice came from a translator box on his chest. It sounded like wind through empty buildings. "We received your emergency beacon." "Status report," Nari stood at attention. "Colony population missing except for 37 juvenile survivors. Evidence suggests hostile alien contact. Unknown species used organic pods to establish presence, then removed adult colonists by force." Commander Zelth's crystal face shifted color from clear to pale blue. "Acknowledged. We have detected the pod formations. Our science officer believes them to be harvester organisms." "Harvesters?" Tay asked. Hive Speaker Crix answered. Her translator made her voice sound like grinding gears. "Nomadic species. They travel between systems, establishing pods on suitable worlds." They harvest biological material from native populations for sustenance and reproduction. Yuna stepped closer to Nari. What happened to our parents? Crix's compound eyes focused on the girl. Adult humans were processed for biological components. Standard harvester behavior pattern. The process is not survivable. Several of the younger children began crying. Minho dropped his food container and ran to hide behind Nari's legs. Could you be a little less clinical about it? Nari said through gritted teeth. Emotional considerations do not alter factual reality, Commander Zelth replied. The adult population of New Busan has been eliminated. Our concern now is proper disposal of remaining survivors. Disposal? Jun's hand moved toward his sidearm. Poor word choice by the translator, Crix explained. We refer to relocation and care of the juvenile survivors. Standard Galactic Union protocol requires transfer of orphaned sentients to appropriate care facilities. A teenage boy named Deho stood up from his meal. What kind of care facilities? Commander Zelth consulted a holographic display that appeared above his palm. The Vorthak Educational Collective has openings for 12 juveniles in their youth development program. Subjects will receive optimal nutrition, education, and preparation for adult life. The Zelani nursery hives can accommodate 15 young humans, Crix added. They will be integrated into proper collective structures and learn efficient social cooperation. What about the rest of us? Yuna asked. Her voice was steady, but Nari could see her hands shaking. Remaining juveniles will be distributed among other Union species based on available resources and compatibility assessments, Zelth explained. The process will begin tomorrow morning. An older girl named Soman stood up quickly. You want to split us up? Send us to live with aliens? The emotional attachment patterns of young humans are noted but inefficient, Crix said. You will adapt to superior child-rearing methodologies within acceptable timeframes. Little Minjae, barely 5 years old, started crying louder. I don't want to live with bug people. I want to stay with Yuna and Deho. Child, Commander Zelth said, his crystal body shifting to a darker blue. Your primitive social bonds are temporary. The Vorthak Collective will provide you with proper mental development free from such inefficient emotional connections. Nari felt something hot and dangerous rise in her chest. She had spent 3 weeks wondering what had happened to the colonists. Now she knew. And these aliens were talking about breaking up the only family these kids had left like it was a routine paperwork exercise. The children have been through enough trauma, she said carefully. Maybe we should consider keeping them together. Impossible, Crix replied. Human military facilities lack proper juvenile care protocols. Your species has primitive child-rearing methods based on emotional bonding rather than efficient development models. Our way has worked for thousands of years, Tay said quietly. Your species has existed for approximately 200,000 years, Commander Zelth corrected. The Vorthak have been successfully raising young for over 10 million years. Our methods are proven superior. Hana stepped forward. Superior for Vorthak children, maybe. These are human kids. Genetic material is adaptable, Crix said. Human juveniles will be modified to better integrate with their new species communities. Simple hormone treatments and minor neural adjustment procedures. The words hit Nari like a physical blow. You want to change them? Turn them into something else? We will optimize them for their new lives, Zelth said calmly. They will be happier and more productive after proper adjustment. Yuna grabbed Nari's arm. Please don't let them take us apart. Nari looked down at the girl's terrified face. Then she looked around at all the other children. They were looking at her with the same expression. Hope mixed with fear. They thought she could protect them. The problem was she wasn't sure she could. The transport ships will arrive at dawn, Commander Zelth announced. Prepare the juveniles for processing. Ensure they understand this is for their benefit. As the aliens prepared to leave, Nari heard Minho whisper to Yuna, Are they really going to make us forget each other? Yuna hugged him tight. I won't let them, she whispered back. But Nari could see the doubt in the older girl's eyes. What could a bunch of scared kids do against the entire Galactic Union? The question that worried her more was, what could one human Marine squad do either? That night Nari couldn't sleep. She sat outside the children's shelter, watching the alien transport ships take positions around the colony. Their blue lights made everything look cold and dead. In the distance, the harvester pods pulsed their slow rhythm like sleeping giants. Her squad had set up a small camp nearby. Nobody was talking much. They all knew what was coming in the morning. Hana was the first to break the silence. "This isn't right," she said, stripping and cleaning her rifle with sharp, angry movements. "They're talking about these kids like they're broken equipment that needs fixing. Did you see how they looked at little Suho when he asked about his sister?" June added, "Like he was some kind of malfunctioning robot for caring about family." Tay had been quiet for hours, staring at the alien ships. Finally he spoke. "Orders are orders. The Galactic Union has protocols for situations like this. We're just Marines. We don't make policy. Since when do we let aliens decide what happens to human children?" Nari's voice was low but fierce. "Since we joined the Union," Tay replied, "we agreed to follow their rules. Those rules were made by species that lay eggs in communal pools or spawn in collective hives." Nari shot back. "They don't understand what family means to us." Hana looked up from her weapon. "The Vorthak reproduce by breaking off pieces of themselves. They literally don't understand individual identity, and the Zilani think of their young as property of the hive." "That doesn't change our orders," Tay said, but his voice lacked conviction. June threw down his cleaning cloth. "So we just hand over 37 kids to be split up and turned into alien pets? What else can we do?" Tay asked. "Fight the entire Galactic Union?" Nari was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and walked to the shelter entrance. Through the partially open door, she could see the children huddled together. The older ones were trying to comfort the younger ones, but she could see the fear in all their faces. Yuna was telling a story to the little ones. Something about brave knights and dragons. Her voice was steady, but Nari noticed how she kept one arm around Minho and another around 5-year-old Gina. "Look at them," Nari said quietly. "They've already lost everything. Parents, home, future. All they have left is each other." "I know," Tay said, "but what can we do?" "Our job," Nari replied. "Protect human civilians." The next morning came too soon. Nari had made her decision during the dark hours before dawn. She gathered the children in the main shelter and knelt down so she could look them in the eyes. "I need you all to listen to me very carefully," she said. "Some people are coming who want to take you away. They think they know what's best for you, but they don't understand humans very well." Deho, the oldest at 16, stepped forward. "Are you going to stop them?" "I'm going to try. But I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say no matter what happens." Little Minjae looked up at her with huge, scared eyes. "Are you going to keep us safe?" The question hit her like a punch. This tiny boy was asking her to promise something she wasn't sure she could deliver. But when she looked at his face and the faces of all the other children, there was only one answer she could give. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I will keep you safe." An hour later, the alien transport ships landed in the colony plaza. Commander Zelth and Hive Speaker Crix emerged with a dozen armed escorts. Their movements were efficient and purposeful. They expected no resistance. They found Nari standing in the doorway of the children's shelter. Her assault rifle was held at a low ready position across her chest. Behind her, 37 children watched with wide eyes. "Lieutenant Kim," Commander Zelth said, his crystal body shifting to a brighter blue. "Stand aside. The juveniles must be processed according to Galactic Union Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha." Nari didn't move. "The children stay with me." "That is not acceptable," Crix replied. Her mandibles spread wide in what humans had learned to recognize as aggressive posturing. Human military personnel lack proper facilities for juvenile care. "The children will suffer under your primitive methods." Sergeant Tay moved up beside Nari. His rifle wasn't raised, but his intent was clear. A moment later, June and Hana flanked them on either side. "These kids have been through enough," Nari said, her voice steady. "They lost their parents. They're not losing each other, too." One of the Vorthak escorts stepped forward, his weapon charging with a high whine. "Commander, shall we remove the obstruction?" "Negative," Zelth replied. "Union regulations prohibit use of force against member species military without extreme justification." But his tone was growing impatient. "Lieutenant, your emotional reasoning clouds your judgment. These juveniles are not your responsibility. Your mission parameters do not include long-term juvenile care." Nari took a deliberate step forward. Her rifle moved slightly, now pointing downward toward the alien commander's feet. The children behind her were absolutely silent, sensing the danger in the air. Her voice was steady as steel when she spoke. "Say that once more." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Commander Zelth's crystal features shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, warning red. The alien escorts raised their weapons slightly. Behind Nari, she heard Yuna whisper something in Korean to the other children. She couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. The girl was telling them to be ready. Lieutenant Kim, Crick said, her translator crackling with static. You are interfering with official Union business. Stand down immediately. Not happening, Nari replied. The standoff stretched on. Neither side wanted to fire the first shot, but neither was willing to back down. The children pressed closer together, their small hands linked. Then little Minho did something that changed everything. He stepped out from behind the older children and walked to Nari's side. His small hand slipped into her free one. Nari Nuna, he said, using the Korean term for older sister. We want to stay with you. One by one, the other children followed. They formed a protective circle around their human guardian, their young faces determined despite their fear. Commander Zelth stared at the scene with something that might have been confusion. This behavior pattern is not in our human psychology files. Maybe your files are incomplete, Nari said quietly. The standoff had begun. 6 hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the alien sky and still nobody moved. Nari's arms were getting tired from holding her rifle, but she didn't let it show. The children behind her had settled into a quiet watch, the older ones keeping the younger ones calm. Commander Zelth had tried everything short of violence. Threats, regulations, appeals to logic. Nothing worked. The humans weren't backing down. This is highly irregular, he said for the 10th time. You are violating 17 different Union protocols. Add it to my file, Nari replied. Hive speaker Crix paced back and forth like a caged animal. Her forearms gestured constantly while she talked to her drones in rapid clicks and whistles. The juveniles require proper care facilities, she said. Your military rations are insufficient for growing organisms. You lack educational matrices, socialization programs, proper developmental guidance. We've kept them alive for 6 hours, June pointed out. That's 6 hours longer than your protocols would have kept them together. One of the Vorthak escorts, a younger male with bright green crystal formations, stepped closer to his commander. Sir, perhaps we should request additional units. Force them to comply. Zelth's body flashed red. The political implications of using violence against human military would be significant. We need a diplomatic solution. But there was no diplomatic solution that would satisfy both sides. The aliens wanted the children processed and distributed. The humans wanted the children to stay together. There was no middle ground. Then something unexpected happened. Hana's motion sensor began beeping rapidly. Contact, she called out. Multiple signatures coming from the harvester pods. Everyone turned to look. In the distance, the blue pods that had been dormant since the humans arrived were now pulsing faster. Much faster. And things were coming out of them. These weren't the large creatures that had taken the adults. These were smaller, about the size of humans but built completely differently. They moved on 6 legs like giant spiders, but their bodies were covered in the same fibrous material as the pods. They had no visible eyes, but sensor organs swept back and forth from their heads like radar dishes. Scout forms, Commander Zelth observed with clinical interest. The harvesters are preparing for a second harvest cycle. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They spread out from the pods in coordinated groups moving toward the colony with purpose. The alien escorts immediately began establishing defensive positions. Their weapons hummed as they charged to full power. But Nari could see problems with their formation. Years of fighting other sentient species had taught them to expect certain tactical patterns. These creatures move differently. Your defensive arrangement has gaps, she told Commander. Zell, our tactical matrices are optimized for maximum efficiency, he replied, stiffly. Against enemies that think like you do, Nari shot back. These things hunt like pack predators. Even as she spoke, the scout forms began to demonstrate her point. Instead of advancing in the linear formation the aliens expected, they split into smaller groups. Some circled around the flanks. Others went underground, disappearing into drainage tunnels and maintenance shafts. Choi, Nari called without taking her eyes off the approaching creatures. Get the kids to the emergency bunker. Deep as you can go. Yes, ma'am, Hana replied. Lieutenant, Commander Zelth interrupted. Your small unit cannot effectively combat the scout forms. Proper procedure requires consolidated defense and coordinated fire patterns. Proper procedure, Nari said, checking her weapon's ammunition counter, is keeping those kids alive. Everything else is secondary. The first wave hit the alien perimeter 3 minutes later. The Vorthak energy weapons fired in perfect synchronization, creating overlapping fields of destructive force. The Zelani drones added their own plasma bursts to the barrage. Against a conventional enemy, it would have been devastating. But the scout forms weren't conventional. They absorbed the energy attacks into their fibrous bodies and kept coming. Some fell, but not nearly enough. Their bioadaptive armor is more resilient than projected, Crix reported, her mandibles clicking rapidly with stress. The creatures that got through the energy barrage moved fast, too fast for the aliens to track effectively. They swarmed the defensive positions using coordination that seemed almost telepathic. "Park Lee," Nari called to her men. "We're going hunting." "What about the standoff?" Tai asked. Nari looked at the chaos spreading across the colony plaza. Alien soldiers were falling back under the creature assault. Their perfect formations were breaking apart. "I think it just became irrelevant," she said. The human Marines moved out in a combat formation that was completely different from the alien approach, where the Vorthak and Zelani fought defensively, trying to minimize losses and maintain organization. The humans attacked like wolves. Nari's rifle barked 3 times in rapid succession. 3 scout forms dropped, their fibrous armor no match for kinetic projectiles fired at close range. The creature's bioadaptation worked against energy weapons, but human bullets just punched straight through. "Armor-piercing rounds are highly effective," Tay reported over the comm, dropping 2 more scouts with precise headshots. June had abandoned his rifle entirely. He moved through the creature pack with his combat knife, striking at joints and sensor organs. His smaller size and human agility let him get inside their reach where their clawed limbs couldn't track him. The aliens watched in amazement as the human tactics proved superior. Where alien coordination relied on communication and planning, human coordination was instinctive. They moved like they could read each other's minds. How do they coordinate without communication protocols? One of the Vorthak escorts asked his commander. Commander Zelth had no answer. His people had never seen anything like it. The battle lasted 8 hours. Wave after wave of scout forms emerged from the pods, and wave after wave fell to human weapons and tactics. By the time the last creature dropped, the colony plaza was littered with alien bodies. Nari and her squad regrouped near the shelter entrance. They were exhausted, covered in strange alien fluids, and nearly out of ammunition. But they were alive. More importantly, so were the children. As the sun set over New Busan, Commander Zelth approached Nari. His crystal body had shifted to a color she had never seen before. Deep purple shot through with gold veins. "Your combat effectiveness exceeded all projections," he said quietly. "We did what we had to do," Nari replied. "Yes," Zelth said. "You did what you had to do, to protect the juveniles." Behind him, Hive speaker Crix was having an animated conversation with her drones. Nari couldn't understand the clicking language, but the tone seemed thoughtful rather than angry. "Perhaps," Commander Zelth continued, "we should reconsider our assessment of human child-rearing capabilities." "Perhaps you should," Nari agreed. The standoff was over. But Nari had a feeling the real challenge was just beginning. The emergency meeting took place in what used to be the colony's council chamber. Commander Zelth and Hive speaker Crix sat on one side of the scarred table. Nari sat across from them, still wearing her battle-stained armor. The smell of alien blood and gunpowder hung in the air. "The Union Council has been informed of the situation," Commander Zelth began. His crystal body showed deep blue streaks that Nari had learned meant he was troubled. "Your actions today have created complications." "What kind of complications?" Nari asked. Crix answered, her translator crackling with static interference. "You violated direct orders from authorized Union peacekeepers. You endangered civilian lives by refusing standard evacuation protocols. You engaged in combat without proper authorization. I protected 37 children from being broken up and sent to alien foster care," Nari replied calmly. "If that's a crime, I'm guilty." "The larger issue," Zelth continued, "is that your tactics proved more effective than ours. The Union Military Command is very interested in understanding how 4 human Marines defeated an enemy that caused significant casualties among our forces." Nari leaned back in her chair. "It's not complicated. Someone threatened my kids. I stopped them. Your kids? Crix's mandibles clicked in confusion. You have no genetic relationship to these juveniles. Genetics don't make a family, Nari said. Choice does. Through the broken window, she could see the children playing in the colony plaza. They had found an old soccer ball and were kicking it around between the debris piles. Their laughter mixed strangely with the sound of alien work crews clearing away the scout form bodies. Little Minho ran up to the window and pressed his face against the glass. Nari Nuna, he called, using the Korean word that had become her unofficial title. Can we have dinner soon? Gina's getting hungry. In a little while, Nari called back. Stay where I can see you. The boy nodded and ran back to the others. Yuna had organized them into 2 teams and was explaining rules that seemed to change every few minutes to make sure everyone got to score. Goals Commander Zelth had been watching this exchange with what looked like fascination. The juveniles have bonded with you as a parental figure in less than 24 hours. This bonding speed is not in our behavioral models for human development. Maybe your models are wrong, Nari suggested. Perhaps they are, Zelth admitted. Which brings us to the central problem. The Union has no protocols for this situation. Crix leaned forward. Normally, orphaned sentients are processed through established care networks. But your species' pack bonding behaviors are more complex than we understood. Separating bonded groups may cause psychological damage. You think? Nari's voice dripped sarcasm. The question, Zelth continued, is what to do now. We cannot simply leave 37 human juveniles under the care of a single Marine lieutenant. You lack proper facilities, educational resources, medical support. We'll figure it out, Nari said, will you? Crix challenged. How will you feed them when your military rations run out? How will you educate them without proper learning materials? What happens when they require specialized medical care that your field medic training cannot provide? The questions hit harder than Nari wanted to admit. She had been so focused on keeping the children together that she hadn't thought about the long-term reality. How do you raise 37 kids on a backwater colony world with no infrastructure? The Union is prepared to offer a compromise, Commander Zelth said quietly. What kind of compromise? We establish a new type of facility, human-run but with Union support. You would have authority over the children's care and education, but we would provide resources, medical support, and educational materials. Nari studied the alien commander's crystalline features. What's the catch? You would be required to accept periodic inspections. Union child welfare specialists would monitor the juvenile's development. If our assessments determine that they are not receiving adequate care, the children would be transferred to traditional facilities. Alien inspectors deciding if human kids are being raised properly, Nari mused. That could go badly. It is the best compromise we can offer, Crix said. The alternative is criminal charges for disobeying lawful orders, endangering civilians, and interfering with Union operations. Nari looked out the window again. Daiho had taken charge of one team and was teaching the younger kids how to pass the ball properly. His patience with 5-year-old Gina was remarkable as she tried to kick the ball with the wrong part of her foot for the 10th time. These kids had already lost everything once. They deserved a chance to grow up together as a family. I have conditions, Nari said finally. State them, Zelth replied. First, the children stay together. All of them. No matter what. Agreed. Second, no medical procedures without my approval and the child's consent. No hormone treatments, no neural adjustments, no modifications of any kind. Crix's mandibles twitched. What if medical treatment is necessary? Treatment, yes. Modification, no. I decide the difference. Agreed, Zelth said after a moment's hesitation. Third, I choose the educational curriculum. You can provide materials and resources, but I decide what they learn and how they learn it. Within reasonable parameters, Crix added. Define reasonable. Basic mathematics, science, language, history, standard developmental requirements for their age groups. Fine, but I also want them to learn about human culture, human history, human values. They need to know who they are. Acceptable. Nari stood up and walked to the window. The children had abandoned the soccer game and were now building something out of debris. It looked like a fort or maybe a spaceship. Their imagination was already working on new possibilities. There's one more thing, she said without turning around. What? My squad stays too. Park, Lee, and Choi. These kids are going to need more than one person looking after them. Your squad has other duties, Crix protested. Then transfer us. Make this our new assignment. Nari turned to face the aliens. You want to study human child-rearing methods? This is how we do it. As a community, as a family. Commander Zelth was quiet for a long moment. His crystal body cycled through several colors before settling on a soft green that Nari had never seen before. Very well, he said finally. We will establish New Busan Juvenile Care Facility under your authority. You will have full custodial rights over the 37 survivors with union support and oversight. And my squad will be reassigned as facility security and support staff. Nari felt something tight in her chest finally relax. Then we have a deal. As the aliens prepared to leave, Yuna appeared in the doorway. Her clothes were dirty from playing, but her eyes were bright with hope. Nari Nuna, she said. Minho wants to know if we're really staying together. Nari knelt down and put her hands on the girl's shoulders. Yes, she said firmly. We're staying together, all of us, for as long as you want. Yuna's smile could have powered the colony's generators for a week. Outside, the harvester pods had gone dark. The threat was over. But Nari knew that the real work was just beginning. 37 kids. One colony world. And a promise to keep them safe and together. She had faced worse odds before. 6 months later, Admiral Vex of the Hegemony Council arrived at New Busan aboard the largest diplomatic vessel Nari had ever seen. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, with flowing lines that suggested both art and overwhelming military power. Nari stood at attention in the colony's rebuilt plaza, wearing her dress uniform for the first time in years. Behind her, the children waited in neat rows, their school clothes clean and their hair combed. They looked nervous but proud. Admiral Vex was unlike any alien Nari had met. He belonged to the Hegemony, one of the oldest species in the Union. His body was tall and thin like a praying mantis, but covered in smooth metallic skin that reflected light like liquid silver. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere at once. Captain Kim, he said, using her new rank. The promotion had come through 3 weeks ago. Your facility has attracted considerable attention throughout the Union. Good attention or bad attention, sir? Both, Admiral Vex replied honestly. Your methods are unprecedented. Some council members are concerned. Others are intrigued. Commander Zelth and Hive Speaker Crix flanked the Admiral. Both aliens looked different somehow. More relaxed, Zelth's crystal body showed warm gold tones instead of his usual cold blues. Crix's mandibles were positioned in what Nari had learned was the Zalani equivalent of a smile. The children appear healthy, Crix observed, watching little Minho demonstrate his reading skills to one of the Admiral's aides. Their development metrics exceed projected parameters. They're happy, Nari said simply. Happy kids learn faster. Admiral Vex studied his handheld display. Your educational outcomes are indeed remarkable. The juveniles score in the top percentiles for mathematics, sciences, and language development. But you have also introduced subjects not found in standard Union curricula. Like what? Philosophy, ethics, creative arts, military history. The Admiral's tone was neutral, but Nari detected curiosity. These subjects are considered inefficient by most Union education standards. They're human subjects, Nari replied. These kids need to understand where they came from and who they are. Daiho, now 17 and serving as Nari's unofficial assistant, stepped forward. Admiral, may I speak? Vex's silver head tilted. Proceed. Before Captain Kim found us, we were just scared kids waiting to die. The other aliens wanted to split us up, turn us into something we weren't. But she kept us together. She let us stay human while still learning about the galaxy. Yuna joined him. She was 13 now and had grown taller, but she still had the same determined look in her eyes. We know we're different from other species, but different isn't wrong. Captain Kim taught us that. And what have you learned about being human? Admiral Vex asked. The children exchanged looks. Then Minho, now 9 and much more confident, stepped forward. We learned that humans don't abandon each other. We take care of family even when it's hard. Even when other people say we're wrong. We learned that being strong means protecting people who can't protect themselves, added Gina, no longer the frightened 5-year-old who had hidden behind the older kids. Soman, one of the teenagers, spoke up. We learned that humans don't give up. When something is important, we fight for it no matter what. Admiral Vex listened to each child with what appeared to be fascination. His silver skin rippled with patterns Nari couldn't interpret. Your combat effectiveness reports make interesting reading, Captain Kim, he said finally. Union tactical analysts have studied your engagement with the Harvester Scouts extensively. What did they conclude? That human military doctrine is based on principles not found in other species' approaches to warfare. Your willingness to accept risk, your adaptability, your emotional investment in the outcome, these factors create capabilities our models did not predict. Commander Zelth stepped forward. The captain and her squad demonstrated tactical superiority that our war colleges are still analyzing. Their success rate against the Harvester Scouts was 97%. Our forces achieved only 62% effectiveness. The difference, Hive Speaker Crix added, appears to be emotional investment. When humans fight to protect something they love, their performance increases dramatically. Admiral Vex turned his attention back to Nari, which brings us to the primary purpose of this visit. The Union Council has spent 6 months debating your facility's status. Some members argue that your methods are too dangerous, too unpredictable. Nari felt her jaw tighten. Dangerous how? You are teaching human children to think independently, to question authority, to prioritize emotional bonds over institutional loyalty. The Admiral's voice remained neutral. Some council members find this concerning. And what do you find concerning, Admiral? Nari asked carefully. I find it fascinating, Vex replied. Your children show remarkable problem-solving abilities, creative thinking, and social cooperation. They also demonstrate fierce loyalty and protective instincts toward their community. He paused and looked around the colony. New buildings had risen from the ruins designed by the older children working with Union engineers. Gardens flourished where the harvester pods had once stood. The plaza where they stood had been turned into an outdoor classroom and recreation area. The question before the council, Admiral Vex continued, is whether this experiment should be expanded or terminated. Expanded how? Una asked. There are approximately 4,000 human children throughout Union space who have been orphaned by various conflicts, disasters, and incidents. Currently, they are distributed among alien care facilities using traditional methods. Nari began to understand. You want to bring them here. The proposal is to establish additional facilities based on your model. Human-run with Union support, focusing on preserving human cultural identity while providing modern education and resources. That would be a lot of kids, Deho said thoughtfully. Indeed, it would also require a significant expansion of human administrative authority within Union space. Humans would need to be granted rights and responsibilities currently reserved for senior species. Minho tugged on Nari's sleeve. Does that mean more kids would get to stay with their families? Yes, Admiral Vex answered directly. It means human children would be raised by humans according to human values and customs. Crix's translator crackled as she spoke. However, some council members oppose this expansion. They argue that human emotional bonding creates unpredictable loyalty structures that could threaten Union stability. They're afraid of us, Zoman said bluntly. Not afraid, Commander Zelth corrected. Concerned. Your species' capacity for pack bonding extends beyond family groups to larger communities, nations, even abstract ideals. This creates military and political implications that some find troubling. Admiral Vex studied the assembled children with his unreadable silver features. They are particularly concerned about something they call the "don't touch our kids" phenomenon. Nari raised an eyebrow. The what? Union analysts have identified a pattern in human behavior. When human children are threatened, adult humans respond with disproportionate aggression and tactical effectiveness. The pattern holds across all documented cases, regardless of genetic relationship between the adults and children involved. You're saying we get dangerous when kids are in trouble, Tay said. He and the rest of Nari's original squad had been listening from the side. Precisely. Your species appears to have evolved a collective protective instinct toward juveniles that extends beyond individual family units. Is that a problem? Hana asked. For those who might threaten human children, yes, Admiral Vex replied. It is a very significant problem. He activated a holographic display that showed star charts of Union space. Red dots marked locations throughout the galaxy. These represent incidents where human military personnel exceeded performance predictions while defending civilian populations containing children. The correlation is exact, every time. So what's the Council's decision? Nari asked. Admiral Vex deactivated the display and turned to face her directly. They have voted to expand your program. Effective immediately, you are promoted to colonel and granted authority to establish similar facilities throughout Union space. Nari felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. How many facilities? As many as necessary. The Union will provide full support, funding, and protection. In exchange, you will train other humans in your methods and cooperate with Union research into human protective behaviors. There's one condition, Commander Zelth added. Union Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha has been permanently amended. Section 12B now states that in situations involving human juveniles, Union forces must defer to human military judgment regarding custody and care arrangements. Crix's mandibles clicked in what Nari now recognized as amusement. The amendment is unofficially known throughout Union space as the Don't Mess with Human Kids Clause. Admiral Vex stepped closer to Nari. Do you accept this assignment, Colonel? Nari looked around at the children who had become her family. They were watching her with trust and hope, the same expression they had worn that first day in the shelter. Behind them stood her squad, ready to follow wherever she led. I accept, she said firmly, but I have one condition of my own. State it. These 37 kids stay together. They're the heart of this whole program. Whatever happens, wherever we go,